This is Winner's Words for Excess Body Fat Freedom and Overfat Prevention in 3 parts. Welcome, my fellow thoughtful and caring adult, to Part 1. I am Dr. Richard Terry Lovelace. A small group of weight loss related words and expressions. I call it loser's language or quitter's quotes. Subtly promotes 22 not our fault and accurate ideas, fat fibs, that are the essential cause of adding and keeping too much unhealthy excess body fat. Except during my teens and early 20s, when smoking cigarettes for nicotine, I had too much body fat. Repeated weight loss dieting and occasional episodes of intense exercising only made my pounds go up and down and hurt my body. Soon after finishing a weight loss diet that was very strict, I realized that the fat was returning quickly. As before, I couldn't get myself to stay on the program's maintenance diet and exercise routine. Because I got rid of smoking successfully using elements of self-hypnosis, I began to do that most days. During those times, I had insights. An important one was that words we human beings commonly use when talking about weight loss give mixed messages. For example, I was being urged to lose weight. The word lose was supposed to have a positive meaning, yet in every other context I knew of, the word lose clearly had a negative meaning. The essence of what I discovered practicing something similar to self-hypnosis that worked wonderfully well for me is what I taught for nearly 40 years and now have put here for you on my YouTube channel. Metacommunication is a word professionals use to describe the underlying messages contained in what we do. Traditionally, metacommunication refers to all of the nonverbal cues, gestures, body language, facial expressions, and more that carry meaning that either weaken or strengthen what we say in words. For instance, someone crossing his or her arms and frowning while saying they are glad to see you suggests that the opposite is true. On the other hand, smiling and opening their arms supports what they are saying. Present-day clinical hypnosis says that words have the same powerful effect. Like nonverbal cues, our words carry underlying or unconscious messages. An example, one of my teachers told me how his teacher and the father of modern clinical hypnosis, Milton Erickson, used the word try to test how responsive a hypnotized patient was to his suggestions. Dr. Erickson asked the patient to try and raise his or her hand. If the patient was already susceptible enough to suggestions, he had trouble lifting or even believed that he couldn't lift his hand. The subject's conscious mind took the word try at its surface meaning, to do something. His unconscious interpreted the word, using the more subtle meaning, to have trouble doing something. If you need to try to do something, it's more likely difficult and may be impossible to do. If it's easy, probably you don't need to try. Saying try often metacommunicates the idea that it will be difficult and maybe impossible to do. Just as some of us are more sensitive to bright lights, loud noises, or strong smells, others of us are more sensitive to language. The subtle meaning of words affects us sooner and more than they do other people. The words we learn to use when we talk and think about weight loss contribute mightily, I promise you, to having and getting back unhealthy pounds. For those of us who are more sensitive to such words, to be pleased with the results of our efforts. As we can, we need to change what we say to ourselves. A thoughtful change in language, shifting to use winner's words, strengthens your physical well-being and your self-esteem. Help to make those so important shifts is just some of how regularly listening to the first 3, the oldest videos on my channel works for you. During some of the hundreds of lifestyle health clinics I led for a major nonprofit organization, I surprised participants by asking them, "How many losers do we have in this group?" I told them, "Now let's see a show of hands of all you losers out there." Of course, no one raised his or her hand. Understandably, I did get some hard looks. Quickly, I explained that only losers were going to be good at losing. An always young, parent-like part of them that influenced them constantly and unconsciously would have nothing to do, at least not for long, with losing. I asked them to begin accepting the reality that they had trouble losing and keeping off unhealthy excess body fat because they weren't losers. They were winners. When we were kids, it was easy to lose. It required hardly any effort to lose ourselves, get lost, and lose our stuff. Consequently, that young parent-like part of us. Reasons that losing weight should be easy. Finding it to be otherwise, mistakenly. It takes that to mean there's something wrong with or lacking in us, such as motivation or willpower. Grown-ups told us not to lose from the time we first began to understand the meaning of words. Don't lose your toys. Don't lose the game. Don't lose your temper. Then years later, they switched to telling us that we should lose. We were supposed to lose weight. What is consistently implied, metacommunicated, that we will do when we lose something? Isn't it that we'll look for and find it again? Also, since we usually think about things that are lost as valuable, such as keys and money. The implication, metacommunication, is that too much excess body fat also is valuable. So it should be held on to rather than lost. The word lose is just one example. More words associated with weight loss give conflicting messages. The surface one seems no worse than neutral. Still, the beneath the surface, unconscious, indirect, or subtle meaning is consistently threatening, discouraging, and or misleading. It has been only in the last 100 years or so that being lean was encouraged. Previously, being overfat was desirable and recommended. In other words, for nearly all of the time we human beings have been here, having more body fat was seen as positive. Some of the reason for this was that more than 100 years ago, epidemic diseases often crippled and killed us. People noticed that when smallpox, plague, flu, or whatever came along, it was the fat folks who more likely survived. They had the reserves of body fat necessary to weather the storm of epidemic diseases. We humans viewed being overweight as an aid to survival. Still another reason for the conflicting messages given by words associated with weight loss was the regular occurrence of famine. From 10,000 BC until about 250 years ago, most people lived in almost constant fear of starvation. It was an advantage to have plenty of extra body fat to help outlast a famine. This is the end of part 1. I am Richard Terry Lovelace, and I appreciate your caring and growing determination to take in fewer or no more calories than you burn instinctively without having to count them.